And that's when our public health officials suddenly went from the beach will kill you and you're a selfish granny killer and super spreader if you go to the beach to, oh, no, it's perfectly okay. You won't get COVID if you protest and riot and you spit in police officers' faces.
Mainstream media gives you the impression that there is nothing good about America. In direct contrast to that, my podcasts will prove by examples that America has always been and still is the land of opportunity for everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode in the series Life Lessons with Dr. Bob. My guest today is Amy Reichert. Amy is a highly energetic, enthusiastic, motivated, and accomplished woman who is a wife and a mother of 2 kids and still has time to run a business. As a lifelong resident of San Diego, Amy has always been committed to keeping San Diego America's finest city, and as you'll learn, fighting to keep it America's freest city. In 2020, in response to the COVID lockdowns, she co-founded a nonprofit organization, Reopen San Diego, whose mission was, as the name describes, to reopen schools and businesses despite vaccine mandates and executive orders, which shut them down. Based on her success with Reopen, which we'll talk a bit about later, Amy realized that she could do even more for San Diegans by entering politics. So in 2022, she entered the race for a seat as one of the 5 members of the Board of Supervisors in San Diego County. She was a Republican nominee and ran against Nathan Fletcher, a strong proponent of the lockdowns. She lost that race to Fletcher, but she's now running again. This time she's running for the remaining term of Fletcher's seat, which he was forced to vacate due to a claim of sexual assault. Today, we're going to talk with Amy about both Reopen San Diego and her upcoming race to obtain some political power to further the cause of freedom for everyone in San Diego County. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Let's start with your courageous battle against the COVID mandates. About 3 years ago, in March of 2020, Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and a week later, the mayor of San Diego proclaimed a local emergency. When did you realize that those executive orders and mandates were a threat to our liberty?
I will never forget the day that I realized it was time to start speaking up. It was June of 2020, and about 2 weeks before, that's when beaches were reopened. That's when La Jolla Shores right here in San Diego was reopened, and my son was 9 at the time, and I took him there to the beach, and of course they had the parking lot closed. It was being guarded by a police car. Apparently COVID was spread all over the parking lot, but it was okay to park on the side streets. So we made our way to the sand. I will never forget, he had his boogie board over his head, and then I went to sit down. And that's when a very good-looking San Diego lifeguard came up to me and said, "You can't sit here." And I was like, "Huh?" And he said, "Well, you can sit down the shore where I can't see you." And I said, "Well, if you can't see me, then you can't see my son."
Yeah, what kind of lifeguard are you going to be if you can't see the people who are on the beach or in the water?
So, of course, with my son being trapped on Zoom school for the past 3 months, and this was really his first time of freedom, I did what any good mother would. I danced in the sand to comply for the government for 90 minutes. And I just basically...
Oh, because you can't sit.
Because I
couldn't sit. That was the rule. I get it.
Well, 2 weeks later, 2 miles from my house is when 3 buildings were burned down because of the Black Lives Matter riots. Mm-hmm. And that's when our public health officials suddenly went from the beach will kill you and you're a selfish granny killer and super spreader if you go to the beach to, oh, no, it's perfectly okay. You won't get COVID if you protest and riot and you spit in police officers' faces. And I'll never forget, I was standing in my kitchen, and that's when I realized it was going to be more painful to remain silent. I knew that by speaking out, I was going to be called names, but that it was going to be more painful to continue to remain silent. So I started speaking out. And just a couple weeks later, that's when Reopen San Diego. We were just a small Facebook group at the time. That's when we started meeting at Balboa Park. There were just 5 of us at the time. And of course, we went on to be tens of thousands.
Now, I recall they actually closed the beaches, right? They wouldn't allow. I recall seeing videos on the news of 3 cops arresting one person sitting on the beach, arresting people for being in fresh air.
It was horrible. I will never forget another moment, too. I just could not believe it. I went down to Sunset Cliffs right here in San Diego, and there was yellow tape all along the cliffs, and there were police officers guarding the parking lots. I've never seen so much police presence.
And you took on Governor Newsom and other powerful politicians by starting this organization. So what were the main objectives of Reopen San Diego?
Well, first, we just wanted the safe, sensible reopening of schools. And we were asking Gavin Newsom, our governor, to follow the CDC. That's right, to follow the science. Because by then, late 2020, the CDC was saying it was safe to reopen schools. And what was happening in California, schools were still closed. In fact, we were going the opposite direction, and we were having this open, shut with small businesses. And small businesses were being hurt. Workers were being hurt. And so we started having rallies, and we would have rallies, and we would call for the safe reopening of schools and businesses. And then by July of 2021, that's when Mayor Todd Gloria, who is a far extreme leftist, tweeted saying that he would award a mayoral proclamation to the first restaurant that would enact vaccine passports.
Ooh, to get into the restaurant.
Right. And as we all know, that was a reality in Boston, Philadelphia, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. And I will never forget seeing that tweet, and I felt like I had been punched in the gut. And I'm like, no, not here. And so we had a beautiful idea. What we did was we formed a small coalition of businesses here, actually a big coalition of small businesses, and we had a sign that said, "We will not discriminate against someone's religion, their creed, their race, their sexual orientation,
or their COVID status, or their vaccine status.
Or their vaccine status." And so these businesses proudly displayed these on their businesses, and we successfully kept vaccine passports out of San Diego County.
Fantastic. Tell us about the lawsuits that you filed. Tell us about the first one.
Right, so this is 2021, and things just kept getting darker. And November 2021 rolled around, and that's when a group of 250 San Diego police officers came to Reopen San Diego and said, Mayor Todd Gloria wants to fire us 3 weeks before Christmas and not give us a religious exemption process.
These were police who didn't want to get the vaccine, and the mayor issued an edict that in order to work for the city or to come to city meetings, you had to have the vaccine and a vaccine passport.
That's right.
Is that right?
So we did a series of press conferences and rallies attracting thousands of people. And we would feature spouses of firefighters, spouses of police officers who would speak. And fortunately, we were able to get the city council and the mayor to stand down. And he did allow a religious exemption process. That didn't happen in New York City. That didn't happen in Los Angeles. They all got fired. But then things got even worse, because then just a few weeks later, the city council passed an ordinance saying that if you didn't get the COVID shot, you couldn't hold elected office. You couldn't volunteer for the city. You couldn't be on a board or commission.
I didn't realize
You
that.
couldn't work for the city of San Diego, and you couldn't attend a city council meeting. And I remember looking at my co-founders of Reopen San Diego, and I said, this is the hill we are going to die on. We are going to file a lawsuit. And we filed a federal lawsuit, and we prevailed. We beat the city of San Diego. A federal judge agreed, and those vaccine mandates were overturned.
Fantastic. And that saved people's jobs, too.
Absolutely.
Do you know how many jobs you've saved? Because I know people were fired. There were some professors recently at a local college that were terminated, and I think you overturned that recently.
So that was 2023. You would think that COVID is just a bad memory by 2023.
This is recent news. Go ahead.
This was recently. So in January, the Board of Trustees of the San Diego Community College District started firing professors who had religious exemptions that were approved, but the district said, oh, no, they're a threat to public safety to even have on campus.
In 2023.
In 2023. And they had already overturned the student vaccine mandate. So students were allowed to be on campus. And here was the cynical thing. They dropped the student vaccine mandate because of enrollment going down. But they were going to fire these professors who they knew had different beliefs than them when it came to vaccines. So I stepped in, we did a huge PR blitz, and we showed up at the board meeting. And not only did we save 50 professors from getting fired, we got the 3 that were fired reinstated, and the chancellor, who had been vaccinated 4 times, but had COVID 7 times. Not a lie. That is absolutely true. But he was the one saying they were the public health hazard. Guess what? He was forced to resign because he handled it so poorly. So we got quite the victory.
Right. So you only really filed one lawsuit, and that was sufficient, right? Was it just one lawsuit?
We filed the federal lawsuit, and I'll tell you what, when it came to 2023, and they were threatening to fire those professors, I would go on local news.
Right.
And
I'm going to do it again.
I said, hey, San Diego Community College, a legal freight train is coming your way.
Perfect. Perfect. And I'm so happy that I helped donated some money to Reopen San Diego, and that was one of my best investments.
Oh my gosh. From the very beginning, you've been with us at our rallies and supporting us financially. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob.
Well, we're doing it for freedom.
Yes,
we're doing it
absolutely.
For freedom.
That's why we're doing it.
Let's move on to politics, as you did in 2022 when you ran for a seat on the Board of Supervisors for San Diego County. What was your motivation to enter politics? Was it to defeat Fletcher, who was in favor of the lockdowns?
Absolutely. In January 2020, the lines were redrawn, and suddenly I found myself in a new district, Nathan Fletcher's district. And if people who are listening, they don't know who this guy is, let me tell you, he's notorious in San Diego County because he was the chief lockdowner, the most powerful man in the county of San Diego, married to the most powerful woman, a union boss. And let me tell you, he was so divisive and so mean-spirited when it came to people who supported the recall of Gavin Newsom. He called people that supported the recall neo-Nazis and white supremacists. I found that particularly offensive because I was raised Jewish. And he would further name-call people. He called people who didn't get the COVID shot or people who didn't wear masks murderers, that we were killing our neighbors, that we were unpatriotic. He called people who were registered Republicans a deranged cult, members of a deranged cult. During San Diego County Board of Supervisors meetings, there are people that would take the day off from work, wait all day so they could have their 2 minutes. And he wouldn't even look people in the eye. He would just be playing with his phone, mean tweeting about his own constituents. So for me, yes, it was personal. He was the chief lockdowner, the chief name caller, and I felt that he needed to be challenged.
Good for you. And as it turns out, he deserved to be terminated, right? He resigned or terminated over sexual harassment and sexual claims. And he's gone into rehab for that, as I understand it, and whatever. So you're now running for his seat. I've read that your top 3 objectives to be a supervisor are, first, to make San Diego more affordable for struggling families. Next, addressing the homeless crisis. And third, ensuring public safety by reducing crime. I'm sure there are more objectives that you want to achieve, but those are the top 3 that I've read about. So let's dig into each one of these. First, making San Diego more affordable. As everybody knows, a major cost for everyone everywhere, not just in San Diego, is the cost of renting an apartment or purchasing and maintaining a home. One proposed way of lowering the cost of housing is to build more apartments and houses. Sounds logical. Well, in that regard, in September of 2021, California's governor signed into law SB 10. This law was supposed to increase the number of homes everywhere in California by allowing the building of up to 10 residencies in up to 3 stories on a parcel that was previously and currently zoned for a single residence. The law is unusual in that it has to be voluntarily adopted by each local government in California, but once it's adopted, it can never be revoked. So, Amy, one of your goals as a supervisor is to decrease the cost of housing here. So why are you against the adoption of SB 10 in San Diego?
I am deeply concerned about how much of our single-family home residents are actually owned by corporations, by BlackRock, Blackstone. You've heard of Larry Fink?
Oh, believe me, I know him quite well.
Yes, and
I've received letters as the CEO of a public company a few years ago. Mm-hmm. I received letters from Larry Fink telling me how to run my company.
Well, I'm very concerned about his participation in the World Economic Forum, which is, their motto is, own nothing and be happy. But the problem is, they're the ones that want to own everything. So the basic idea of SB 10, and it was passed at the state level, is say you live in San Diego and you live in a residential community and you live...
Which you moved into because of its character. That was residential. That's why you decided to buy a house on a half an acre or a quarter of an acre among other people who lived the same way.
That's right. And according to SB 10, if you live up to a mile away from a bus stop, well, your next door neighbor can sell their single family home to BlackRock or Blackstone. And then that corporation can come in and bulldoze that house and then put up to 10 units with no setbacks on a single family. Yeah. That's right. No parking, no cutouts for affordable housing. So is that really the answer to affordable housing? No, because what will happen is that apartment complex will be reassessed at market value. And of course, those apartment units will be rented out at fair market value, which is already sky high. So I did not see that as an actual solution for affordable housing, and I really saw it as an attempt of corporations to come in and turn people into lifelong renters and destroy the community character of neighborhoods.
I hadn't thought of the corporations, developers coming in and buying single-family lots and then building multifamily units there, which on its face is okay, but not when you consider the change to the neighborhood. And, housing is expensive here, but not everybody has to live in San Diego. There are other places to live in the world. So I think the market adjusts by itself. When the prices go up, people will find other places to live. Not everybody can afford to live in exclusive neighborhoods. And, that's what capitalism's all about. They talk about affordable housing. We have to build more affordable housing. Well, it's affordable if you can afford it. It's already affordable. So I just don't understand the concept of tearing down single-family homes to build multifamily units. So what do you believe are the causes of the increase in pricing of housing in San Diego?
I believe that government needs to get out of the way, and that government is the problem. Just last week, the San Diego City Council passed a 20% water increase rate over the next 2 years, 20%. So if you are a landlord, of course you've got to pass that on to your tenant. And of course we have the highest utility rates in the country. We have $7 gas. We pay the highest gas tax in the nation.
Yeah, nobody's talking about making gas more affordable.
That's
By
right.
drilling more and producing more oil domestically. And a lot of the cost of real estate has to do with the regulations in this state, which are enormous. To build an apartment unit probably takes 2 to 3 years of legal work and applying for permits. It just takes too long and it costs too much, and all those costs. And then when you build something, there's all sorts of code requirements. I don't know if you know what a backflow preventer is. Every
Yes.
home in California, at least in San Diego, has at least one backflow preventer. I have 3 of them on my property. What a backflow preventer does is it's a one-way valve that prevents water that is in your house from going back into the community. Well, under what circumstances would that ever happen? The pressure is higher outside. And even if the water went back, it's the water that you just got. So when I've lived in various places, I've never seen backflow preventers. And every year you have to get your backflow preventer tested and certified. That's just one example of the many expensive administrative headaches that this state enforces on people. Now, in order to build any new property in California, has to be you have to have solar panels. Whether you want them or not, whether you can afford them or not, that's built into the price now. So all of these requirements that the administration puts on us without question. Laws go through a legal procedure to get enacted, but the administrative state can pass regulations without comment and enforce them. And that's the primary reason why I think everything is so expensive in California.
I agree. Government gets its cut. And through developer impact fees, that's a huge revenue driver. So if the government were really serious about affordable housing, well, they would reduce property taxes, they would not increase water rates, and they would for sure lower developer impact fees.
All right. Next, let's talk about homelessness. Homelessness is a big issue in many large cities in our country, and most politicians are attempting to solve it as if the homeless are a homogeneous population. So they propose a single solution for everyone who is homeless. And their solution is put them in hotels. Now, I'm not an expert on homelessness, but my understanding is that there are 2 reasons why people are homeless. First, there are those who are chronically homeless because they are either mentally ill and or they are addicted to drugs or alcohol. The vast majority of homeless today fit into this category. The second, much smaller category of homelessness are those who I'll call transitional homeless. The transitional homeless are those individuals who are normal people who just can't afford a place to live either because they're down on their luck or they're escaping from abuse at home. And as I said, most politicians take the view that the homeless are all the same. So they propose a one-size-fits-all solution. They propose to end homelessness by giving each homeless person a home. Just put all of them in hotels, regardless of the negative effect on the community. But giving the transitionary homeless a place to live until they get back on the feet is a good idea, but it won't work for the chronically homeless. So what is a possible solution for them? Well, when I grew up, there were no mental people roaming the street. Now, that might not be a politically correct term that I'm using, but that's the term I use. There were no mental people roaming the streets when I grew up. But surely, there were just as many mental people then as there are today. So if they weren't on the street, then where were they? Well, they were in special hospitals, usually referred to as state hospitals, where they're housed, cleaned, fed, given medication, and protected. But they were there against their will. This age-old and successful method of treating the chronically homeless came to an end in the mid-60s when leftist organizers passed laws and ordinances ending the incarceration of mentally ill patients against their will. I recall the argument that these people, that they made, that the leftists made, that, oh, the homeless, these people, these mentally ill people, they'll be better off when they're integrated into the community. Well, you can see how well they're getting integrated in the community. But because of their pressure, in just a few years, all of the state hospitals around this country were closed, with the result that all of those patients are now on the streets, fending for themselves. The experiment of giving mentally ill or drug-addicted people freedom of choice is obviously a failure. So what are your ideas, Amy, of lowering or helping the homeless in our district?
Enabling is disabling. This so-called compassion from the far left is actually killing homeless people. Last year, 588 homeless people died on the streets of San Diego County. That's a 6-fold increase since 2012. Clearly, Housing First, which is what Governor Gavin Newsom supports, has spent $23 billion. Again, just giving people a hotel room has failed. I have actually toured these so-called hotel rooms. These are horrible on the inside. I spoke to several residents. There's mold, mildew, cockroaches, bugs in these government tenement houses. It's clearly, there's not a one-size-fits-all policy. The homeless issue is multifaceted. It's complex. It's also heartbreaking. We have a humanitarian crisis, especially now with the border, with 7,000 migrants over the past couple of weeks just being released into San Diego County with no food, no shelter, no water, in a county where there's less than a 2% occupancy rate. And we already have an existing homelessness crisis. So my plan, it's called Shelter First with Treatment. Now, keeping in mind, yes, we have people who are disabled who are homeless, people who are elderly. We have foster care youth. 1 out of 4 experience homelessness when they age out of the system. Domestic violence victims. So veterans, right? We have the resources to help them. This population has a tendency not to be service resistant. But when I talk to Democrats, when I talk to Republicans, when I talk to independents, and they tell me that homelessness is their number one issue, they'll say, Amy, come a little bit closer. It's actually the encampments I'm worried about. So really, what people are truly concerned about when they say, I'm concerned about the homeless, it is the encampments, it is the chronically homeless. And here's what we know about the chronically homeless. We know when it comes to the people who are living in the encampments, and we know they're not roasting marshmallows over there, okay? There is an intersection of people who are severely mentally ill, they're struggling with severe addiction, they're homeless, but there's also violent crime being committed and serious crime being committed.
And the police are unwilling, I imagine, to interfere.
The police that I know in San Diego, they signed up to serve and protect, and they want to, but they're being handcuffed. They are being handcuffed by some bad laws that's saying that you can't ask a homeless person to move if there isn't shelter available. These are all being challenged. We're starting to see some of the Democrats actually come around. There's something called Care Court that is going to be introduced this fall. So this is for people who simply cannot take care of themselves.
Right.
So it goes beyond they present a danger to themselves or others. No, they literally can't care for themselves. So they'll have due process through Care Court. I believe that that is a step in the right direction. But when it comes to people who are struggling with severe addiction, severe mental illness, I do believe in shelter first with treatment. And I do believe if they are committing serious crime, that treatment must be mandatory. We can't keep sending them to jails. what we're seeing is sky
They
high
have to
overdoses.
be sent to state hospitals. That's
State
where they have
hospitals,
to be
locked,
sent.
locked facilities.
Locked facilities.
Because
Correct.
what's happening in our jails is people are committing suicide who are mentally ill. In April, 30% of the inmates in San Diego County were on psychotropic medications. Clearly, sending them to jail is not working.
Right.
Mandatory treatment. It is compassion from the far extreme left is actually killing people.
It's a complex issue, but we have to address it in a different way than politicians currently are. Your third top issue, Amy, is public safety. It's an issue that is on everyone's mind. The freedom to go shopping, to walk the streets, or to visit a park any time of the day or night without fear. Lately, when you just walk into a drugstore, you see products, and I'm talking about ordinary off-the-shelf products, not prescription drugs, but products that you want to buy that you don't need a prescription for, but you can't put into your shopping basket until a clerk opens a case for you. What happened, Amy, and what are your thoughts on reducing crime here in San Diego County?
That's my number one reason for running for county supervisor is to literally save San Diego from becoming San Francisco or Los Angeles. What we are seeing there is companies and grocery stores and big box stores are fleeing there because they cannot guarantee the safety of their customers or even their employees. Sadly, that's starting to happen right here in San Diego County. In Hillcrest, we had a Starbucks that was going to be there for almost 30 years. They had to close their doors because they could not guarantee the safety of their customers or their employees. And what we're seeing downtown is businesses are fleeing our urban core where we need them the most, because they find that they have to keep their doors locked during business hours, even for their own customers. This is not the San Diego I grew up in. The status quo is failing. The people from Nathan Fletcher's party have led us to this place in just 5 years. I've been in San Diego County for 5 decades, but it's been in the past 5 years that now even Democrats are saying, no, it's horrible, the quality of life. And they'll use expletives, actually, to describe how bad San Diego is. And I'm just hoping that through my campaign, through conversations with Democrats, I'm able to help them connect the dots. I'm not trying to be partisan. I'm not trying to make this about party. I'm trying to make this about people. And we need to hold the people accountable that got us into this mess. People like Nathan Fletcher and people like my opponent who supports reparations. Reparations when the state of California has a multi-billion-dollar deficit. We need to be able to protect public health, public safety, small businesses, and kids.
If you can make a dent in those major issues, Amy, it will be a marvelous thing for all of us in San Diego. I want to thank you for spending time with me today, and thank you so much more for your energy, your hard work, and your fearless commitment to keep San Diego as a place where freedom of choice prevails. So, best of luck in the upcoming election. If you appreciate what Amy's already accomplished for the people of San Diego with her can-do, high-energy spirit, and if you want to join her in the fight to preserve our freedoms, then go to the website reopensd.org, that's all one word, reopensd.org, and volunteer. And if you want to help her accomplish even more as a member of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, then visit her campaign website. It's amyforsandiego.com, all one word, amyforsandiego.com. And while you're there, consider making a donation. I did. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Bob, please subscribe and you'll be automatically notified of future podcasts in this series.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Bob. If you enjoyed these interviews with some of today's most influential thought leaders, please follow and rate the show on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget, you can also watch each episode on YouTube as well. We'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate reading your comments on YouTube and social media, and now you can submit your questions on my website as well. Head over to lifelessonswithdrbob.com and click the question tab at the top of the page or the one on the right side of the screen, and let us know what's on your mind. I'll answer your questions at the beginning of each episode, so let it rip. Let's have some fun.